Ladies and gentlemen, we are heating things up here live on Facebook at Tom Bryce, at Sportswire Radio, Sports Report X, also the Northeast Streaming Sports Channel, where you can catch us also on Roku, LinkedIn, and Sportswire Radio, Twitter at Thomas Bryce 2017, because our guest here, somebody that I've been talking about, I feel like for the past couple of weeks now, and I'm sure people have heard by now the clips on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else, and he is going to be a part of arguably maybe one of the most heated matches you're going to find in all of professional wrestling this year. And it's going to be maybe one of the longest matches you're going to find here in professional wrestling this year, because he is going to be a part of a 2 out of 3 falls match. It is the final curtain match here for the LWF's upcoming event here this Saturday, the Lancashire Riot. He is going to be a big part of it. He could arguably be the main event. He is also a great singer and musician in his own right. We'll get into that in a little while as well, but obviously excited to speak with him just hours before his huge match upcoming here against Lachlan Sharpe. And without further ado, here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show, pro wrestling star and musician, J-Mac John Mckinnie. My friend, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And let me just say thanks for the great introduction. And the pleasure is all yours. Let's face it.
Well, the running joke before we get into all of this, John, is that I've been saying this to everybody now, I guess for the past 3 years now, is that you won't remember me for all the interviews I've done, but I'll guarantee you remember me for the intros, because everybody loves those intros. So at the end of the day, you may not like me, you may not remember our interview months from now, years from now, but you'll certainly remember that intro, because I'll guarantee you, anywhere you go and you're a musician, you get introduced all the time, you probably won't get as good an intro. And certainly you won't get as good an intro, I'm sure, at the LWF's upcoming event coming up here this Saturday.
They should bring you over to do the ring announcing, I'm telling you.
We've spoke with Steve Bibby about it. Steve Bibby has said, listen, come on down, come to commentary. So we're hoping things get a little closer to normalcy, and I'm looking to make my way to an LW event, and I'll obviously hope to maybe call your match and maybe give you an intro. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed, my friend. But obviously, it is a tremendous honor, and I've been talking about you quite a bit here. I think that this is arguably going to be the best match on the card. And I know I spoke a lot about the triple threat match and the women's rumble and the 8-man tag, and Nate Reese has got a challenge. We'll get into it. I mean, there's a number of great matches on the card here. Yeah, but this is the match, John, and no pressure on you, John. This is the match that I almost feel like in a lot of ways, if it's not the main event, it should be the main event. It's going to steal the show, but set the tables for our audience that's watching this all over, listening to this all over on sportnarium.com/player, what we can expect in the 2 out of 3 falls match, the final curtain match between you and Lachlan Sharpe.
Well, I mean, you are right about one thing. It's definitely going to be the match of the night, because obviously I'm in it. What you can expect is it's a bitter rivalry. We have history, Sharpe and I. We go way back. I made my debut against him. We've been tag team partners in the past. I debuted at Future Shock Wrestling against him. Now we're at the LWF, and it's just come to a head. This is the rubber match, as Mike Fitzgerald likes to call it. And yeah, I mean, it's just going to go down to the wire, but ultimately, Lachlan's getting his ass kicked, and that's how it's going to be.
I wouldn't expect anything less, because watching you guys in the ring in the past, even when the bell rings, you guys are pretty much like, it's rah, rah, rah. You could tell. Sometimes there's wrestlers in the ring, and it's almost like you could tell that they're friends. In this case, you can tell that you guys definitely have no love for each other. There's a lot of animosity to say. But when it comes to a match like this, and I was speaking about this with Mikey Fitzgerald, obviously, this is not going to be your average wrestling match. And not to say that any other average wrestling match wouldn't hurt or wouldn't take much to train for, but this is going to be different. This is a 2 out of 3 falls match. I'm assuming here your endurance, your cardio has got to be through the roof for a match like this. But for those that are watching and listening to this that may not quite know what training goes in depth for something like this, I mean, talk to me about your preparation and training for this match.
I mean, first of all, I'd probably like to say that I feel like I'm probably going into this as a bit of an underdog. I feel like everybody's talking about Lachlan Sharpe. You know, he's like the poster boy of the Northwest wrestling scene at the moment. Lachlan Sharpe is the name I just keep hearing. Everyone's banging on about him. Nobody's really saying anything about me. So I think, I think people are underestimating me, and I think that's dangerous because what I can do is cause quite a lot of damage in the ring. In terms of preparation, I go about my business, I'm a well-stacked guy. I eat the right food. I train, and I'm not changing. I'm not changing the way that I do things because I know how to beat Lachlan Sharpe. I've beaten him before, and I'll beat him again.
Let me ask you this question because you had a couple different things, and I want to get to the underdog part because it kind of is hard for me to believe considering the history between you two. But we'll get into that. But you said training really isn't much different. Is that fair to say for a match like this versus like any other match? Is that fair to say?
I think the physical aspect of training, you probably need to concentrate on your conditioning a bit more. But for me, I think it's more of a psychological thing with this one. I think we've got into each other's heads quite a lot, so it's about who can mentally handle the challenge as much as the physical challenge. And I think I've got in his head. I think he's quite angry. He's usually quite a calm, relaxed Aussie guy, and he seems pretty stressed. He seems pretty. I think I've got under his skin, and I love it because it's just great to kind of feel like I've got that advantage, that mental advantage, and ultimately, that's going to be the difference. I think because don't get me wrong, he is a super athlete. Like that, I can't fault the guy. He's great in the ring. Like he is a freak. The things he can do, but
sure.
It's going to be, it's going to come down to the wire, but I am confident that I've got what it takes.
Well, no question that from what you're telling us here live on all of our different streams that you should be very confident. And you said you're the underdog, but now after just hearing you speak, I don't know if you are the underdog because you said that you've gotten into a little bit in Lachlan's head. Lachlan is a very cool and calm and collected kind of guy. So the fact that, and we know this from professional wrestling, if you're in a wrestling match, if you're not calm, cool, and collected, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You're going to certainly be not on your A game. So almost in a sense, I have to ask you, John, are you sure you're the underdog coming into this match after what you just said?
I think I probably need to clarify my point there. I don't think I'm the underdog, but
all right,
the people think I'm the underdog. Like I say, I'm sick of hearing, I've seen all these other podcasts, not as good as yours, by the way, people banging on about.
Well, I want to tell you one thing before you go further. I'm not a podcast. That's the difference.
Well, okay. Well, radio show. Well, I think yours
appreciate
is good.
that.
You know what you're talking about. But basically, all these guys going, one to watch in 2022, Lachlan Sharpe, and everyone's fangirling over Lachlan Sharpe, and it's just getting boring, to be honest with you. Nobody's talking about me. They should be talking about me. I'm out doing things that no one else is doing. And then I just think we're going to see what happens on Saturday. I think there's going to be some surprises in store.
Absolutely, no question about it. And again, these are reasons why I'm really, really excited about the upcoming card here this Saturday, just a few short days away. And I feel like, John, I've been talking about this card like for the past 5 years. It's certainly been a while, but there's some great matches here in the card. You are going to be a huge part of that. We'll also get into some of the matches, maybe your thoughts on what we can expect in those matches as well. And also, I want everybody to follow the LWF on Twitter at LWF, Instagram, the LWF Wrestling. Also, subscribe to the YouTube page for the LWF. Also, Facebook, please like us. I think we're up to 1,600 likes or so on Facebook for the LWF. So make sure also you follow all those great things because John Mckinnie is going to be a huge part of this card upcoming this Saturday. His 2 out of 3 falls match, the final curtain between him and Lachlan Sharpe. Well, can you imagine that, ladies and gentlemen? The final curtain between these two guys. I mean, there has been no love lost between you guys. And John, I almost compare what I've seen from you guys in the ring, maybe not so much in your styles, but very similar in a sense to how Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels didn't like each other. And in fact, with Mikey, I had made the comparison, at least for the training for this match. I was kind of hoping for, I don't know if Steve Bibby has something up his sleeve or not, but I was hoping almost for those WrestleMania 12 promo package videos where there was the one video where Bret Hart is training and he's running up the mountain and he's speaking on top of the mountain and talking about the match and he's running up the gym and up the stairs. Then they have Shawn Michaels training with Jose Lothario, and it was like that training package. I still remember being a little kid and watching it like, wow, I'm really excited about the Iron Man match. I was hoping that you and Lachlan would have the same type of package, but maybe Steve Bibby, maybe he's working on something we don't know about, but that's how excited I am for this match.
Steve Bibby's usually got something up his sleeve, I tell you.
Oh, we had him on last month. So
Yeah.
listen, I would never count out Steve Bibby, but the fact of the matter is this match in a lot of ways reminds me of the Iron Man match in a lot of ways. Maybe it's going to be 60 plus minutes. Who knows really? But in terms of the training, in terms of the feud between you guys, it's all coming to an end here. I mean, do you feel that? I mean, what's your thoughts?
I think, yeah. I mean, it's the biggest match of my career, definitely. I think it's come to a head. I think it has to end. This match has to end the rivalry between me and Lachlan Sharpe, because otherwise we're just gonna literally be facing each other for the rest of our lives, and something's got to give. It's yeah, it's been a difficult road to get here. The first two matches, I'd just like to make a point of saying, actually, the first match was at October Overload.
Yep.
And I beat Lachlan Sharpe. It was a clean win. I beat him 1-2-3 in the middle of the ring. We then went on to V is for Vengeance, which I think was the November show. And I'd like to make a point, actually. There was an apparent power cut, and there was this power cut that literally happened just before our match. And to me, it was probably the biggest screw job since Montreal, because there was a power cut. It gave Lachlan Sharpe a second to blindside me at the back. He took advantage. He managed to get the win, but miraculously, the power cut was only there for that moment. So I think Steve Bibby, I think Mike Fitzgerald, even Greenwood, the referee, I feel like they were all in it. And
I've heard a lot about Jimmy Greenwood. He's been a very, very controversial figure here on this show. We've heard Isaiah Quinn has certainly aired his grievances here with me on him, so no surprise there.
That doesn't surprise me either. But I think the lengths that they got to get this superstar matchup that they want, this 2 out of 3 falls match, did well. I mean, I think the evidence is there for people to see, but I'm having to roll with it. And the match on Saturday, it's not going to be easy. Of course it's not, but I'm prepared, and I'm gonna do the business.
John, I'm curious about this, and give me your thoughts, because sometimes when you've been in the ring with a wrestler a few different times, you go back to the tape and you watch the matches over and you figure out, you know what? Okay, well, what was Lachlan's weakness? Or maybe what could I have done differently? Or in the case of the first match, do the same thing. Or in the second match, clearly there's an evidence there for a case that you should have won that match. So maybe you look at some of the good things there before what happened. Have you gone back and watched those matches a lot to kind of give yourself maybe a heads up, or kind of figure out what you should do, or maybe what to do differently coming Saturday?
I mean, I suppose the thing about mine and Sharpe's rivalry, and I think I heard you and Aiton Steen, or Tony Rock, or whatever his name is these days, talk about it. The fact that me and Sharpe, we've wrestled each other so many times during the COVID time. We actually got on all right for a bit. We were training partners, so I know his wrestling style inside out, and he knows mine inside out. So to be honest with you, it doesn't matter how many times I watch those tapes back, because I know what he's going to do, but I know that he knows what I'm going to do as well. So it really is, we've got to bring something new to the table.
No question that those are things that could certainly be a part. And it does kind of remind me of Brett and Sean, because when Brett and Sean started out, they were both in tag teams. They were both very friendly. They would watch each other's matches. They would compliment each other. They were in the ring a lot. And then obviously things happened and their careers went into a different direction. Becky and Charlotte's another example where Becky and Charlotte trained with each other. They were friends. And then all of a sudden they kind of went on a crash collision course. And we've seen how that's wound up here. But I want to go back to the fact that you said that this is the biggest match of your career. And there's no question you've been in some big matches. You've been a part of some big things here. But does that maybe put pressure in? Because I talk with all different types of people. I talk with politicians because I have a news background. I speak with all types of athletes in all different sports. And when this comes up, we always ask them, well, does it put more pressure on you? I mean, for you, John, you're obviously a musician. You perform all the time. You're very successful also in that field. Does that put more pressure on you that this could be the biggest match of your career?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, the pressure is on. I've heard Lachlan Sharpe running his mouth saying that I don't have the desire for wrestling anymore, that it's time I should retire. He's made comments that I'm spending too much time on my music and I'm not focusing on wrestling. So obviously I've got a massive point to prove, because I do love wrestling. I mean, yeah, I am spending a lot of time in my music, but who wouldn't if they're as successful as I am? But the fact of the matter is, yeah, he's running his mouth trying to kind of say that I'm almost like I'm a has-been and stuff. And it's down to me to prove that I'm still very much someone to watch out for.
No question about it. And listen, I mean, you can be a successful musician and also be a great wrestler, because Chris Jericho has proved that.
Exactly.
I mean, look at Fozzy, right? Fozzy's had massive success over the past 10 or 15 years, and it hasn't stopped his career. So being a great musician, it really shouldn't stop you being in wrestling. And at the end of the day, that's going to be for Lachlan to decide what he feels on that. But also when it comes to something like this match, and again, 2 out of 3 falls matches, I'm almost curious, have you watched any prior 2 out of 3 falls matches? I think of like Flair Steamboat as an example, or some other types of matches that come to mind. Have you watched any of those, maybe to kind of figure out different things that, you know, and don't tell us what you're going to do, but have you watched any prior 2 out of 3 falls matches in order to prepare for this Saturday?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I watch a lot of wrestling, and I mean, you mentioned the Iron Man match earlier. To me, that's like one of my favorite ever matches. I remember it as a young lad, just being absolutely like mesmerized by it. I think that I go into my preparation is, I think about what J-Mac can do. I don't look to others, and I don't try and copy other people's styles. I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, I know what I need to do, and that's the way I approach things.
Absolutely, no question about it. And these are reasons why, again, we're really, really excited about the card upcoming here. And John Mckinnie is going to be a huge, huge part of that. And I also want everybody to give John Mckinnie a huge follow on Instagram as well, JMCK Attack. So make sure that you follow him, because
I'd
he's
be
going to be
J-Mac Attack.
Yeah, we got Jay. Well, I don't have Mac in here, so I'm trying to read off your Instagram to make sure, because everybody always says one of the biggest advices I got, John, was actually from a politician. The first thing he said to me was after the end, because, you know, Tom, you got to make sure you plug everybody's social media at the beginning, not the end. So we wanted to make sure at the beginning, because you are a big deal. You're a very successful musician and also a successful wrestler. So we want to make sure we get it right. So obviously, Instagram, you can make sure you follow him, JMCK Attack. Also, Facebook, John Mckinnie has a page also for music as well. So keep up with all those great things here. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. We'll come back to the match here in a little while with Lachlan Sharpe. But John's going to be wrestling in 2 out of 3 falls here, final curtain match. But John, I always like to ask this question, especially because I have people here all over the world, and me being from New York and the United States, I wanted to ask you, and what got you into wrestling?
I wish I could tell you. I've been a wrestling fan for as long as I can remember. Like, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, because I'm
don't tell. One thing I've learned in life is never to ask people's age.
I mean, I'm older than I look. Let's face it. But to sort of set the scene, I suppose. I was a wrestling fan as a young kid. And I was lucky enough to go to SummerSlam '92 in Wembley Stadium.
Oh wow, okay.
So yeah,
right.
So
that
was actually that was my first live wrestling experience. So wow, what an experience that was. And I've just loved it ever since. You know, people talk about, oh, I liked it as a kid and then I grew up. Well, I just never grew up. I've just loved it ever since. Always have and always will. You know, do I think the product is as good these days as it was back in the day? I don't know. I think it's evolved. But I still love it. I still watch it. It's part of my life. It always will be.
Oh, listen, I mean, SummerSlam '92 again. Brett and the Bulldog. I mean,
yeah, man,
again,
one of the greatest matches ever.
Again, I mean, every wrestler I speak with, and it could be US, UK, you name it, they'll always reference in some way that match. I mean, it's arguably, again, one of the greatest matches of all time. So, I mean, listen, you're going to be a part of a match that's arguably going to be one of the greatest matches in LWF history. So, small world. I mean, right, 30 years later, you're going to be a part of that. I mean, obviously, again, some great memories there. Who were some wrestlers that you were big fans of, or maybe said, you know what, when you decided you wanted to train, that maybe you wanted to emulate?
I mean, you've mentioned a couple already. I think my favorite as a kid, my favorite probably was Bret Hart growing up. I then, as I got older, probably actually turned into more of a Shawn Michaels fan.
That's kind of how I felt. I mean, I was a Bret fan, and all of a sudden, like the second run of Shawn's career, I'm like, how could you not respect this guy for what he did?
As much as I loved Bret, I think like Sean probably was the better in-ring performer, and I think when you sort of grow up a little bit and you get past Brett sort of, the best there is, the best there was, the best there will be. Like Sean's in-ring style is just well exciting, and his matches just never failed to be absolutely amazing. I think like when his retirement match against Undertaker was amazing. When he retired, Flair was incredible as well. So probably Shawn Michaels has probably been my sort of favorite wrestler.
Well, how about the match he had with Kurt Angle at WrestleMania? I mean, that match actually is my favorite, arguably. I mean, you think about Shawn Michaels, and we'll get into obviously some of the things you're going to do here shortly. But when I think about Shawn Michaels, anybody you put him in the ring with, he had a great match. Not to say that Brett didn't do those things, but Brett was very limited. They would quote unquote say the 5 moves of doom. It was, and we love Bret Hart. Stephen Cross is a huge Bret Hart fan.
Oh yeah, I know he is. Yeah.
He's a huge Bret Hart fan. I love Bret, but Bret's really run as a singles guy essentially was 6 years in WWE and WCW. You got maybe a year.
Count that.
Yeah, exactly. So Shawn, on the other hand, I mean, he had practically an 8-year run. 8 year, but he wrestled all the guys we're seeing today, whether it's Orton, whether it's Rey Mysterio, whether it's John Cena, whether it's Angle, all the different big wrestlers the past 20 years. Shawn Michaels was in the ring with them, and he's a huge part of wrestling now, obviously with NXT. So I could certainly see why you became more of a Shawn fan. I think a lot of people this day and age appreciate Shawn maybe a little more than Bret. But again, love Bret, love everything he did. My favorite matches with Bret Hart were also the matches he had with Diesel. There was a great storyline, some of those things he told, but those are some great things, and we'll certainly get into them, I'm sure, down the road with you. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about the LWF and the card upcoming here, because there's a lot of matches here, and I'm sure you've heard by now some of the other wrestlers here that you're going to be sharing a dressing room with, share some of your thoughts. And the first thought I want to get your opinion on is, well, obviously the triple threat match, because we had on Eitan Steen. I'm sure Eitan, you heard some of his comments that he had to say about you, and obviously the match with Lachlan, because you referenced it. So give me your thoughts, because obviously we know you're going to beat Lachlan Sharpe, so you're going to be in the mix for that LWF World Championship.
Yeah.
So obviously, number one contendership match, we have Eitan Steen, the Turkish Wolf, Sona Dursun. I mean, what a match that you and him would have. And obviously, Nick Cutter of the Wrecking Crew. 3 wrestlers with 3 different styles. The winner of that match will face off with Reynaldo in April. But give me your thoughts on what we can expect in that match, and any other general impressions.
So it's a big match, that one. And all 3 of them are great competitors in their own sense. I've actually been in the ring with Nick Cutter. We've had a one-on-one match for LWF early days, and it was good. He was young and up and coming then. But I thought I had a match with him, and I thought, yeah, this kid's good. And he's obviously developed and got better and better and better. Sona Dursun, I mean, what do I say about that guy? He's just,
John, I have to say, I want to know what's left of Sona Dursun, because RPD hit him pretty hard in a boxing match last week with TNT. So I said that to Eitan. Eitan kind of chuckled, but Mikey Fitz disagreed with me. He thinks Sona Dursun will be A-okay, but Eitan was happy I brought that fact up.
Yeah, I also think Eitan was probably a nervous laugh, because he knows that Sona Dursun can do the business.
Fair point.
But yeah, man, like that's going to be a really, really interesting match. Difficult to call, but if I had to choose someone for that match, I'd probably go with Sona, because he's got the experience, he's got the technical, he's just got everything. I think he is. I don't respect that many people, but Sona Dursun is someone I can't help but respect, because he is incredible in the ring.
Oh, he's Sona Dursun. Listen, anytime you've been on WWE Raw, anytime you've been in the ring, as long as Sona Dursun has, and has had the kind of success and the type of great matches he's had, you almost can't not respect him. So I could clearly see why you'd be respecting Sona Dursun.
It's not often I hold my hands up, but Sona Dursun, I have to do it. It pains me to say it, but yeah, what a talent that guy is. Yeah.
Well, there's no question about it. And I've said, actually, I said this with Nate Reese and also Stephen Cross a few weeks ago. Reynaldo and Sona Dursun, that would have been a dream match 10 years ago in Future Shock. Now to have that possibly in the LWF, that would be almost too good not to want. I mean, listen, Eitan we love. Eitan, I almost think may have a little bit of an edge here. Nick Cutter and Reynaldo have a history, but Sona Dursun and Reynaldo in an LWF ring for a world championship, I mean, that would be a pretty cool thing to see, I think.
That's a Slamaganza main event written all over it, isn't it?
And certainly we know that you're going to win your match and you're going to get whoever is left and you're going to claim the gold. So, I mean, obviously for you, that's you know what, John, great thinking, because that might be why you want Soner to win, because, Soner and Reynaldo are just going to beat each other up, right? We had Nick Cutter on here a couple months ago after he lost to Reynaldo. And Nick Cutter said, well, maybe I took Reynaldo lightly. Then you've got Eitan Steen, I tried to give the opening. I said, listen, Eitan, you might have the opening here. You might have the advantage because Soner's going to be roughed up. Nick and Reynaldo are going to be focused on each other. And he actually said, no. He has a long-standing beef with Nick Cutter. And he said he really doesn't like Nick Cutter. So you know what? At the end of the day, for you, John, maybe this is all going to work to your advantage, because Soner Durson wins. Reynaldo and him are going to beat each other up like it's 2012 again. So for you, that's going to be big advantage, and you're just going to pick up the pieces and win that gold.
I mean, usually things work out my way anyway. So, it's a pretty good looking title belt. And I think it's probably time for the LWF to have a legitimate superstar representing their company. So look no further.
Well, certainly this is the second time I'm going to reference the song. So for whatever reason, and I'm sure you've covered it, maybe you've heard of it. It's the U2 song, whatever reason, mysterious ways, things work in that way. And it could certainly be to John McKinnie's advantage. But again, in all seriousness, really looking forward to that triple threat match. And the other match I really want to get your opinion on is the Women's Rumble here. The first ever Women's Rumble here. And certainly the It Girl, Melanie Price, had a lot to do with it. And all of these wrestlers in the ring, I mean, they're in phenomenal shape. They're all in their own rights could be world champions. You've got Alexis Falcon. You've got Gia Adams. You've got Helena Razor, who we had on here a couple weeks ago. We've got Kelly Van Ness, who's all over the place. We've got a long list of wrestlers, Tonga, that could very well win this, the first ever Lancashire Riot. This is why we're having the card here. I mean, John, I don't know if you have a favorite. Very tough to get the ladies angry, so I don't know if you want to pick one. I think Eitan pretty much said he liked Helena, but he could make a case for all of them to his credit. So what's your thoughts here on our first ever all-women's Rumble here at the Lancashire Riot?
I mean, first of all, it's to be fair, it's like a who's who of British women's wrestling. It's stacked. I mean, it's a really impressive lineup for that. Obviously, they all love me. That's just the effect. It's just the effect I have on them. But yeah, there's some really, really strong contenders actually, and I've thought about this one, and it's a really difficult one to call. I think Kelly Van Ness. I've got a bit of a history with her. We were in a mixed tag in August or September, the show there, and I was actually teaming with my girl Mel Price. But Kelly Van Ness, I
originally picked her to win, by the way, the It Girl Melanie Price.
Yeah, well, actually, we'll get to that shortly. So, yeah, but Kelly Van Ness, she's given me a slap round the chops during this match, so I don't fancy her for the win. I'm actually gonna agree with you. I'm going with my girl Mel for this one.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I mean, listen, if you wanted to have this and you made Steve Bibby do it, you almost have to think she would be right there at the top of the discussion, because again, Melanie Price kind of forced everybody to come up with this. Then we had the whole thing where literally we had to get the whole town to pretty much break everybody up here in order to finally have that match. And Helena Razor we had on here, she's also going to be a huge part. I want to give Helena a huge shout out of Shining Wizard as well. So obviously huge shout out to her as well. So we're going to go on the record, It Girl Melanie Price. We'll see what happens here. And obviously it'll be a tremendous thing. But also, in all seriousness, congratulations to all the ladies. And I wanted to ask you, John, and how monumental is that for the company now that we're going to crown our first ever women's champion?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I think it is. People have got an opinion of me and the way I can act, but I will say you've got to take your hat off to Steve Bibby. Like, the things he's done with that company has been amazing, and I think it's a long time coming. But I think what a way to crown the first ever LWF Women's Champion. And like I say, there's so many. Any one of those women in the match could win, and I think it just shows how far the company's come. And I think they all deserve it. And yeah, hats off to Steve on that one. He's done a good job.
Absolutely. Congratulations to all the ladies. All seriousness, congratulations. And again, I've gone on the record, John, regardless what you may think, this is going to easily be better than the WWE Royal Rumble that we had for the men's and the women's side. It's going to be that good because I can tell you, you've got a case for all of these ladies that are going to be a part of this that could win this event. So obviously, huge shout out to all of them and great package that everybody put together at the LW. I know it was Mikey Fitz, but that little package for the Riot, I mean, that was a great little package. So obviously, very, very excited about the card coming up here this Saturday. And the other match I want to get into is the 8-man tag between Synergy, the Models, the Squad, and the Wrecking Crew, who are tag team champions. And John, I know it's going to be tough to pick a side because you don't want to get any of these guys angry, but part of me thinks here, I mean, what's going to be left of these guys after they're done with each other?
I mean, yeah, talk about a lot of beef in one place at one time.
The meat wagon, come to mind.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of run-ins with Synergy. I think we're at the level now that, yeah, we're not the best of friends, but we're all right, me and the Synergy boys. And I wouldn't bet against them. And the Models, obviously, they are, as far as I can remember, I think they are still the Future Shock tag team champions. So, I mean, that is one strong side, but I suppose you can't bet against the Squad and the Wrecking Crew either. The Wrecking Crew is the LWF is the Wrecking Crew's stomping ground. So it's a tough one, but I've got to go with Synergy and the boys. Got to do it.
That's a tough one, and I could understand where you're coming from because we had on, obviously, Nate Reese and Steven Cross, and we had obviously promoted the card, the Winter of Discontent, and I think we all came to the agreement that Synergy were going to be the tag team champions. It was their belts to lose, but obviously we saw what happened between the Squad and the Wrecking Crew, and the Wrecking Crew certainly benefited from that, and they certainly paid for that. Let's just put it that way. They paid for that, but you could certainly see why Synergy might be looking to even the score here because they definitely want gold here in their future. But I do look at the Wrecking Crew. We've had Davey Getzky on here a couple times. We've had on Nick Cutter, and obviously we spoke about Mr. Cutter. But to me, the X factor here in this match might be Chris Shaw, the big man, because he might get a little overlooked here when it comes to the Wrecking Crew because obviously Getzky we've had on. We've talked about him quite a bit. Cutter's obviously out there all over the place, but if you are going to make a case for the Squad and the Wrecking Crew to win this match, I could make the case that Chris Shaw could be the X factor.
Yeah, you've got a good point, and I suppose it almost mirrors the situation with myself and Sharpe, where everyone is probably going to be saying the Models and Synergy are favourites. So actually, they're probably overlooking what Chris Stone and Getzky and the Squad can actually do, but. I think from my opinion, I think having been in the ring with Synergy and knowing firsthand what they can do, like it's difficult to bet against them.
Listen, me again. I had the natural born fighter RP Davis on. I think it was right after the ladder match they had. It was him, Rick Marcus, Reese and Rogan, and Synergy. And I don't know how the team of Born Ready was able to come out of the ring in one piece and win the match. Synergy, we had them on last year, literally, I think right around this time. And Synergy have blown up. I mean, we've even seen them on the WWE Network. I mean, so Synergy, I think they're the next big team to break here if they haven't already. So I could certainly see why, John, in the sense that you are going to certainly bet on them and see if they'll come out on top with the victory here. But I want to get to somebody else here because I've had him on here, obviously, each and every week. He's been a huge part of the Sportswire radio team and the Sports Report. And he's going to have a match here. And it's interesting because, and I've been trying to think about this, and John, you know better than me because you're a professional wrestler. And Bob Costin actually gave his spot up to Wildfire Nate Reese, because I'm sure you might have heard by now or watched, at least in the back, what happened after their match against the Squad. Obviously, no Dan Evans in this match, but Dan Evans was in the last match. And Nate Reese certainly did a number on Bob Costin, and Mr. Costin was on here a few weeks ago, and he certainly shared his thoughts and aired his grievances out. But he's saying that, you know what, Nate Reese, you can have my spot upcoming this Saturday. I don't want to be in the card. You said I'm selfish. Well, you know what? Now I'm going to be selfless, and here you go. And you've got a gift, and Nate Reese is certainly taking it, but he does have a challenge here. And what do you make of all this between him and Bob Costin, Nate Reese, and what can we expect in his match? I even asked Eitan Steen if Eitan Steen is going to be the guy that's going to pull double duty, and Eitan Steen said it's not him, but he would want Nate Reese in the ring. We asked Mikey Fitz about it. Mikey Fitz said, well, technically it could be Eitan Steen, but he's not expecting it. I mean, what do you make of what we can expect here this Saturday for Nate Reese and his open challenge and his kind of back and forth, and certainly the number he laid upon Bob Costin?
Well, for a start, I mean, let me put this to you. Is it not just Bob Costin being a coward that he's given up his spot to Nate Reese? Sounds like he's scared.
Good point. That's, you know what? That's a fair point. I mean, listen,
why would you give up your spot? Why would you give up your spot on the show?
You know, that's what I said. Listen, any person would think, well, why would I give my spot up? I couldn't think of a wrestler that would give up his spot. In fact, you might have a point, John, because Bob Costin, actually, when we did the interview, he didn't do it on video. We had to pre-record it. Everybody, as I'm sure you're aware of by now, always wants to come on live because of the exposure that we give you on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. Also, now that we're on Roku with the Northeast Streaming Sports Channel. So the fact that Bob Costin didn't even want to show his face on the camera, maybe there's something that we don't know.
Yeah, like I say, he's a coward. That's all there is to it.
Any thoughts then on Nate Reese and his challenge? I mean, I know you're not going to be coming out to wrestle, Mr. Reese. That I know, because you've got bigger things to worry about, and I'm sure a match that's going to take a lot out of you. So, I mean, any thoughts on what we can expect?
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose, what can I say about Nate Reese? So he's changed quite dramatically over the last few months, and I actually quite like his change. He was very cheesy beforehand. He was pandering to the fans. He cared about what they thought about him, giving it the whole "let's go," and it was just it was so cringe. Now he's developed a bit of an attitude. He's a bit more cutthroat, and I like it because he is decent in the ring. He's a good performer.
Always been a solid wrestler. I actually watched a match with him against Soner Durson from 15 years ago. He had Big T in his corner, and it was a really good match, I have to say. Really good wrestler.
The guy knows what he's doing. He knows everything about wrestling, and there's no doubt about that. But he's finally sorted his attitude out. He's dropped the cheese. He's stopped caring about what they think, and he's out for himself now. And that's how you get somewhere in life. You just go out for yourself, and you just look after number one. And finally, he's doing it. So, hats off to Nate Reese for finally looking after himself.
You know, I gotta say, at first, John, I wasn't quite sure about the change. I thought, okay, maybe it's a New Year's resolution, turn over a new leaf. But yeah, you know what? I kind of like it. I think Nate has got himself back in a position where he needs to be. And Bob Costin, some might say, well, you know, it's Bob Costin. But at the same time, you can't think like that. I mean, clearly Bob Costin didn't win the match for them in the tag team tournament. Nate Reese won a gold, and Bob Costin didn't help in that part. So at the end of the day, you do what you got to do. And Nate Reese is a veteran. He wants to be back at the top of the card, and good for him. I mean, we'll certainly talk a lot about it this Friday. I'm sure Mr. Reese will be very happy with your comments because we're going to be speaking with him Friday night. So I'm sure Mr. Reese is going to be very happy, and I'll be certain to know that I'm sure he'll be rooting for you now that he heard that you're this.
So he should.
Fair point. Listen, you're on our show, so I'm rooting for you automatically. So, I mean, you know, there's no question that that's going to be happening. And I want to bring up somebody else here before I get to the other component of the card here that was just announced actually a few days ago. That is the asset Stephen Cross. And a lot of ways, I do think that your style in the ring a little bit is similar to Stephen Cross. We saw Stephen Cross debut in the LWF late last year against Jack Roberts. He was, I guess, sort of a part of the Wrecking Crew at the Fight Man for Christmas. And obviously, Stephen Cross is somebody that's in phenomenal shape. I think of any wrestler in the LWF right now that can only wish to be in half the shape that the asset Stephen Cross is. So I know he's going to be listening. We'll be speaking with him for sure Friday. Give me your thoughts on the asset Stephen Cross.
He's a funny one, the asset Stephen Cross, because obviously we are very, very different. But actually, he's one of the very few people in the locker room that I get on with. I like his attitude. He doesn't care what other people think about him. He speaks his mind. He's hard. And I mean, yeah, he does. He looks great. Like have you seen that rig? Like he's
I watch his videos on Instagram all the time, and I'm like, does this guy have body fat? I mean, it's like 0%.
He's in insane shape. But yeah, I mean, I can't say too much about him, but yeah, we've got a quiet respect for each other, me and Cross. Actually, yeah, we don't excuse the pun, we don't cross paths much, but we're like we're all right, you know.
Well, John, you're very good with words because obviously you are a musician, so I could certainly see why you kind of had that little tongue-in-cheek there reference. But obviously, again, Stephen Cross, I'm expecting big things for later this year in the LWF, and again, in phenomenal shape. I think him and Rick Marcus are probably in the best shape of any wrestler in the entire scene here, especially in the Northwest. So I'm really, really excited to see what Stephen
John
Cross.
McKinnie.
Well, you're on. We know you're in the best shape of anybody altogether. See, that's the difference, John. You're in the best shape of anybody in the world. They're just in the best shape of anybody in the Northwest. So, I mean, listen, cheap pop there, John. And also, John, you're multi-talented. There's a
That's
big
what I'm
difference.
here for, right?
Right. Obviously, listen, you do interviews all the time, so you can certainly tell the difference. But obviously, again, very, very excited about Stephen Cross, what we're going to do. And this was just announced a few days ago, and we had him on a couple weeks ago, and he's going to be a part of the day after our event here this Saturday for the LWF, the biggest date ever against Big T, which I have said is literally going to be bigger than the Super Bowl because the size and the weight of those two gentlemen is probably literally going to be like as big as a country and a continent, but they are going to be in a ring for sure at the biggest date ever. So we'll see how that shapes up. But we're talking about Franco Varga here. And Franco Varga now is announced for the card here this Saturday for the LWF. And Franco Varga, we have had on. His resume speaks for itself. He has become somebody that's very ingrained in the UK scene. And he's from my neck of the woods, actually. He's from my neck of the woods here in the New York, New Jersey area. And Franco Varga has been in the ring with some big names. He holds a victory over Chris Masters. He's been in the ring with Carlito and Ron Simmons he's toured with. I mean, EC3 he just wrestled. So he's a big name. He's legitimately, and Franco said this when he was with us on the air, he's all the time wrestling WWE guys. So essentially we have, I guess you could say, an extension of the WWE coming to the LWF in Franco Varga. So, John, I mean, what can we expect this Saturday from Franco Varga?
I mean, what a coup for the LWF for a start, you know.
What did Steve Bibby pay for this one?
He
didn't pay handwritten notes for this one because Franco Varga don't work for free.
He's probably almost paying him as much as he pays me. But
I don't know. I think Franco Varga, he basically broke out the bank for this one. Remember the old adage as kids when you had a piggy bank and you'd shake the piggy bank and try to get every penny possible? I think Steve definitely did that and some.
Yeah, well, let's hope it's a sellout on Saturday, which I'm sure it will be. Yeah, I mean, who knows what to expect? I mean, he's not got a match announced. I mean, we touched on it before. You know, there is an open challenge. Maybe those two things will end up colliding. But yeah, it's a great coup, and again, it shows how far the LWF's going. It's going from strength to strength, getting names like Franco Varga in. So I think it is going to be exciting. It's going to be great.
Absolutely, no question about that. Again, shout out to Mr. Varga. Obviously, it was a tremendous honor to speak with Mr. Varga, although Mr. Vargas only gave us a short amount of time, but whatever time he gave us, we would definitely appreciate that. Again, looking forward to Saturday's event here. And we are talking all things related here to the world of the LWF and more with pro wrestling star John Mckinnie, who is going to be a huge part of this card. Arguably is going to be the main event. It is going to be the show stealer. He is going to be in a 2 out of 3 falls match, the final curtain match. They are calling it against Lachlan Sharpe, and it is a tremendous honor to have John here. You can follow John again on Instagram at JMCKAttack. So as Dokken used to sing, back for the attack, John Mckinnie is back for the attack as well. And I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And if you like what you hear from us on Sportswire Radio, you can follow us anytime on Facebook at Sportswire Radio. You can also 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our content on sportnarium.com/player. And we will be back here tomorrow night with another pro wrestling star. That's right. That is Jack Johnson, who is going to be a part of the biggest date ever. He is going to be a part of some huge things upcoming. He'll be at GT Ministries next week. So really, really excited to be speaking with Jack. And I'm so excited. The fact Jack actually messaged me, John, like 3 times over saying how excited he was to come on the Sports Report and Sportswire Radio. So you know this is going to be good. I'm very, very excited here to be speaking with Jack Johnson. So looking forward to that. We will also be back here once again Friday night, just hours before the LWF's Lancashire Riot with the asset Stephen Cross and Wildfire Nate Reese. And something tells me Nate Reese and Stephen Cross, because they weren't on last week, are going to have plenty to say here about this card, especially about Mr. John McKinnie's comments as well. So very, very excited for that. That'll start at 10 p.m. British Standard Time, and we'll have a DJ that'll open for us before that is our DJ Dale. So a lot to have excitement for here. And also, again, want to make sure everybody follows the LWF on Twitter, LWF Thought, Instagram, the LWF Wrestling, Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube page as well. So make sure all those great outlets you follow, like, subscribe, whatever it is, because there's going to be a lot of LWF content out there in the future, and John McKinnie is going to be a part of that. And John, I'll get back into the card and some of the things you're working on here with your match with Lachlan, but I did want to at least spend a few minutes on your music and talking about your musicianship, because you are a phenomenal musician. I've even seen some of your stuff. You can actually play all of the instruments. You can sing, you got the piano, you got the drum kit. So clearly you know your way around here. You've been a big part of the scene here in the UK with playing gigs out and such. And what got you into learning to play the guitar and singing?
I suppose I've always known that. I think there's old like videos of me as a toddler like singing with a vacuum cleaner alongside I think it was like Tina Turner or something, like back in the 80s. So I've always had music inside me. Actually, my first sort of instruments growing up was saxophone and piano. So it's actually classically trained on.
I always thought the saxophone was a very tough instrument to learn how to play. I always thought that.
Yeah, so I got up to like grade 8 on the sax, which is like the top grade you can get. And I think I was about 15 or whatever, and I think I was like a bit of a rebellious teenager. Didn't think it was cool anymore. Started listening to rock music and just like self-taught myself like drums and guitar, and just started playing in bands and stuff like that. And yeah, I've just cracked on ever since then, really. And yeah, probably the last sort of 6 months coming up to a year in terms of gigs and you know, what went from maybe doing a couple of gigs here pre-COVID. I was doing a few gigs here and there. Obviously COVID happened, so there were no gigs at all. And then last summer started doing a couple of gigs and things were picking up, and it's just absolutely exploded. Like I'm just so busy with my music work. It's awesome. Like I can't fault it actually. I literally work 7 days a week because I have a regular job as well. So I've got a regular job, I've got wrestling, I've got music. You know, I'm a busy guy, getting pulled in all directions. That's why everybody wants a piece of me, basically.
I could understand why. And I'm always curious about this because I'm friends with a few bands in the UK. One of them is the Superlatives. The other one is the Frantics. The Superlatives are more of I guess a punk grungy band, a little bit of a hard rock influence. And the Frantics are more, I would say, alt hard rock. But I'm curious because as a musician during COVID, it was very, very difficult. I mean, I speak with people all the time, and you know, being friends with them and friends with their manager, these guys couldn't even go into the studio. It was almost like you have to find ways to do something on Instagram or Facebook Live. I mean, how challenging was that as a musician to be able to keep going during COVID?
Yeah, it was hard, man. Like I probably stopped playing for a while. And I did a couple of I streamed a couple of like online gigs, more out of like boredom than anything else. And I just wanted to kind of practice, and I thought, well, I may as well. But it's just not the same, you know. I live in an apartment, so it's not the same like trying to belt out as you would do in an actual gig. So yeah, it was tough, and things slowed down. So like I say, it's been great since like, you know, most restrictions have been lifted, and we've been able to get back onto the scene. And I hope you boys have been managing to get gigs and stuff again.
Yeah, they're doing very well. In fact, the singer actually messaged me about 2 or 3 weeks ago and said he wanted to actually come back on the air, and they're in the studio working on music. So yeah, actually,
nice.
Everything's going well with them. And John, I'm going to make you chuckle. I think one of the hardest things as a musician is actually to play in an apartment. And the reason I know this is because my parents are musicians. My father was a drummer, and my mother sang. And I know one of the hardest things for a musician is to play in an apartment, because in an apartment, you've got tenants, you've got different people living in a building. And, you know, so to be able to do what you try to do, at least, it's very, very difficult. So I could certainly respect and appreciate the fact that as a musician, you need that space, you need that setup, because otherwise you really can't adequately play the way you want. But I always like to ask this question, similar to when I ask about wrestling. Who are some of the bands and musicians that maybe you looked upon to emulate your craft more or less on?
I think sort of early days of sort of learning, kind of like starting to learn guitar and drums and stuff was Nirvana. Like I was obsessed with, like, I had I had a VHS of MTV Unplugged recorded off the TV, and me and my sister, literally, we watched that thing to death. That was my biggest influence. And then obviously through that, I started listening to the heavier Nirvana stuff, so like Bleach and Incesticide and stuff. So they were sort of big influences. I kind of like got into some of the grunge stuff a bit more, kind of like Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains as well.
Don't tell me Silverchair.
Silverchair, all right, yeah.
I always make everybody laugh when I bring up Silverchair, if you're a grunge fan, because they were kind of like, I guess, you know, Lachlan Sharpe won't appreciate this, but I guess the Aussie version of Nirvana. But they were like the knockoff. They were like the knockoff Nirvana. It was. I almost equate Silverchair to, like, when you think about like 80s hair metal and you had like Motley Crue, and then it was like everybody else that was like the knockoff band. Like to me, that kind of was like Silverchair almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I get you. And then, like, yeah, I mean, I like all kind of. I'd say like I'm a rock music fan, so I kind of like, you know, I'm into like. So yeah, what I play, like what I play out and what I do for a living is different to the music that I listen to. And that
I figured that, because I think most musicians, that's the answer you'll generally get. Because I remember I had a guitar teacher when I was playing, and he liked like heavy music, but when he'd play out, he'd play like it, like, you know, what places you're playing, like restaurants and bars, and you play like to what your audience is. So you always have to play to your audience.
Yeah, you play to exactly.
And I appreciated the Bush song you covered a while back, because
that's going back a few years.
Well, the reason I appreciate it is because, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a huge John Wick fan, and actually for John Wick 3, the closing song from John Wick 3 is actually Bush Bullet Holes. It was actually Bush's comeback. So that's why I thought you would have appreciated the tie in there. Cool. So obviously, again, you do great work. I've actually got to watch some of your stuff on Instagram and some of your other videos. So I at least wanted to plug some of the music, because I wanted to do that justice. But obviously, those are things, again, everybody can check out. John's got a Facebook page, Instagram page, all those great things as well. But I also wanted to ask you this question when it comes to the LWF's card here, and when it comes to your match specifically against Lachlan Sharpe. And don't tell me how you're going to win the match, because we know you're going to win the match. We know, but don't give your secrets out, because I'm sure Mr. Sharpe's listening to this, and that'll give him an advantage. But how important is the first few minutes in a match like this?
Well, it's 2 out of 3 falls, isn't it? So I think the first. Yeah, I mean, you've got to have a strong start. I think the first fall is crucial. I don't plan on. I plan on winning 2-0. Put it that way. But I
hope it's not 2-0. I want to see 3 falls here. Mikey Fitz actually said on Monday that it could be 2-0. So I guess he knows something that we don't know. I guess maybe.
I don't care if the fans go home unhappy because they feel like they're ripped off. I literally don't care. I'm just going to win 2-0. And actually, do you know what? I've not even said it tonight, but I had to speak to Mikey and I had to speak to Steve, and I had to say to them, look, lads, I've got a gig that night as well, so I'm gonna do my match. I'm gonna beat Lachlan, and then I'm off.
Wow. I mean, listen, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it first here live on Sportswire Radio, sportnarium.com/player. Also on Roku here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Channel. You're actually going to do a 2 out of 3 falls match, which could be anywhere from, who knows, 5 minutes to even 60 minutes, because we understand you've been given a 60-minute time limit, according to Mikey. And then you're going to play a gig. I mean, how are you going to pull something off like this? Are you human?
I mean... That's why I am who I am, because not everyone can do what I do.
I'm trying to figure this out. I was watching a movie last night, and it was Vince Carter, who was the NBA star. He graduated college and then played an NBA playoffs game, and they flew him in from North Carolina to go to Philadelphia. But John, you're literally going to wrestle who knows how long of a match that's going to be very physical, and then play, who knows, an hour, 2-hour set. I mean, again, I'm trying to think of a scenario here and help me out. I mean, I don't know if I've ever heard of a scenario like this. This is really a really, really big deal here. I don't know why LWF management isn't promoting this enough. They should be promoting the fact that John Mckinnie is going to do a 2 out of 3 falls match here. And then on top of that, he's going to perform a gig for, who knows, could be a 45-minute set, a 2-hour set. I mean, This is unheard of. We should be promoting this. If this isn't going to sell out any left tickets for Saturday's event, clearly somebody's going to get their head examined. John, help me out here.
The reason they're not promoting it is because they don't want all of the fans there to leave to come to my gig, so they're keeping it quiet.
Good point.
That is what would happen. So yeah, I'm not going to disclose where it is because I do have to honor that the LWF need to keep the fans there. So
totally understand that. You got to do what you got to do. What's best for business, certainly do that. But this goes back to something you said a little while ago when it comes to Lachlan Sharpe, in that management, certain people are betting on him. Maybe they want him. They see him as the investment here. But after what we just talked about here, and the fact you are a very successful musician, you are also somebody that's a very, very, very good wrestler, I might add as well. I mean, wouldn't it make sense, though, to promote you rather than Lachlan? I know you say that you don't care about the fans and you do things because you want to be creative. And a lot of musicians, to be fair, also think that way, because as a musician, you have to play to what you feel, and you can't worry about record sales. You can't worry about ticket sales. You can't worry about the trends. You got to worry about what's best for John Mckinnie. But I would think, and if it was me, now I'm not the owner of the LWF. I realize that I'm not in management, but I am on the radio side of things, and I know how to promote. I would think the guy that I would want to promote here is John Mckinnie rather than Lachlan Sharpe. What do you say?
I mean, it would totally make sense, wouldn't it? I mean, as I said earlier, I mean, yeah, it astounds me that Lachlan Sharpe is this. He's a decent in-ring performer. Don't get me wrong.
I think he's a very good wrestler, but I think that John Mckinnie is the guy I'd be want to promote. I
think you're right. I don't know what else to say on that. I think you have a very good point, and this is why I came on your show, because you do talk sense.
Well, apparently I've been told that, and that's why we're on nine different streaming platforms. Not to brag too much about myself, but again, I'm still trying to figure this out because, again, no disrespect to Lachlan Sharpe. He is a good wrestler, a very good wrestler. I've watched a number of his matches, not just your matches with him. But I would think at the end of the day, I look at John Mckinnie, I see successful musician. I see very good wrestler. I just see the possibilities. Think of it this way. In WWE, right? They always made sure to promote The Rock. They always made sure to promote those that were doing outside interests. Obviously, who's the biggest wrestler right now? The two biggest wrestlers. Brock Lesnar was the UFC champion, and now that Ronda Rousey is back, right? They were known for things outside of WWE. WWE promoted and acknowledged those things. I would think, if I'm Steve Bibby, if I'm Mikey Fitzgerald, I would want to be promoting what John Mckinnie does. And let me tell you why I would want to do that is because you have fans, right, in the music world, right? You have an audience, right? How do we grow the LWF? How do we grow this company? We have to expand.
On John Mckinnie.
That's exactly my point, because you want to merge that audience. And one of your biggest parts to your audience is the ladies. And clearly, we don't have too many women at LWF events. So I would think, John, at least for me as a red-blooded male and a businessman, I would want to expand my base. I would want to expand my horizons. So that's why I'm not figuring out that the business sense here isn't so good when it comes to management.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, I know Steve Bibby likes to see himself as a bit of a musician. I've seen he plays guitar and sings the odd song here and there. So maybe he's just a bit jealous because he's not J-Mac, and maybe there's a bit of the green-eyed monster there that it's not happening, you know?
I'm going to make you laugh about Steve Bibby. In fact, one of the things he said, we were on the air, and I can't believe I'm bringing it up, so now he'll never want to come on the air, but frig it at this point. He actually said he referenced his hairline, why he wears the cap. So I will say maybe he's envious that your hairline's a little better than his at the top. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Who knows? I'm getting myself in a whole lot of trouble here.
You can't blame him or anyone of being jealous of me, to be fair, but, you know, we'll leave it there, I suppose.
Well, we certainly will. And one of the things I also want to talk about, because obviously I'm from New York, and actually you were here a few years ago, and in fact, for good reason, because you were at WrestleMania 35. So I got to ask you, John, especially for a lot of my audience in the New York area looking at us here, I mean, you got to talk to me about that experience of being at WrestleMania 35.
Oh, man, it was incredible. I mean, first, I've got to say, New York is one of my favorite places in the whole world. Like, it was my first time there, and there's no doubt in my mind that I will be back. Like, I absolutely love it. It was incredible. Like, I was there for 2 weeks. Like, me and a few of my mates came, and we did the first week in New York, and then we went up to Atlantic City, which should have been good, but the time of year we went, I don't think was great. So it was a bit kind of,
if you go in March, April, it's not the greatest. There's not much going on. It's very
exactly. It wasn't brilliant. We went up to Philly for a day, which was cool, but it was literally just a day trip. So we just came back to New York early because I was like, do you know what, man? There's so much still to do in New York, and I had a great time. But yeah, so yeah, hats off. What a magical city, what a magical place. But WrestleMania itself, like I said, I've been to SummerSlam '92, so I've been to a big pay-per-view before, but obviously that was several years before this one. But yeah, man, it was brilliant. Like, it was a dream that I've always wanted to go to WrestleMania. I've always wanted to go to New York, so I ticked 2 off at the same time. I think it was like 8 or 9 hours of wrestling, man. It was a long show.
It was a big talk about in the New York area the next day on the radio was the commute for a lot of people that were commuting by public transportation. It was a disaster. I still vividly remember just how a disaster that was.
It was a nightmare. Like, because like me and my friends, obviously we were having a few beers through the day as you would, and I think we didn't really kind of figure out how to get back because it's in Jersey, isn't it, the stadium technically?
And it's like a weird place. It's like it's where they say like dead people are buried and such, like bad people are buried.
Yeah, so essentially we ended up paying. It was something ridiculous, man. Like $150 or $200 to get a taxi back from there to get back into Manhattan. But we were just like, we just got to do it because what else are we going to do?
No, you know what? You were smart because there were people that I remember this was actually a talk on Sports Talk Radio of all places. There were people that were stranded from MetLife Stadium for like 4 or 5 hours. And if I recall correctly, I think it rained at some point.
That was what sold it for us. I think it was like 200 or maybe even 250 we paid because it just started chucking it down, and we were like, you know what? We'll just pay whatever. Like, it was like $50 each or whatever. Let's just do it and get.
You were definitely smart on that. And I have one quick WrestleMania 35 story. We have about another 20 or so minutes with John McKinney, of course, just days before his huge match upcoming here in the LWF's Lancashire Riot. He'll be in a 2 out of 3 falls match against Lachlan Sharpe. That is also for the final curtain, as they may call it. So I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. I have a quick WrestleMania 35 story. I don't know if you were there or not, but Friday night in Brooklyn, it was almost like an access. It was an access event for WrestleMania. And it was X-Pac, Shane McMahon was there. I think Rikishi, the Usos. I think it was Sasha Banks might have been there. And I was actually there, and I have pictures. It's on my phone still where I have like the Ultimate Warrior statue, the WrestleMania entrances I came out with. It was a whole thing. And they did it like it was literally almost like they call it Dumbo down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass. It's literally like it's an abandoned area in Brooklyn. And they had WrestleMania access there. And you got to see, I went free because I had a connection, and make a long story short. And I had all this stuff I got to see, all the mementos, the photos. And that was my WrestleMania 35 story because I wasn't spending an arm and a leg on a ticket to go to MetLife Stadium. But that was definitely my moment. And very quickly, I'll ask you, is there a favorite match you had from WrestleMania 35 that you saw?
Oh, let me think.
Don't tell me Triple H and Batista. Do not tell me.
No. Stunk the place out.
It sucked. It really wasn't a great match.
Do you know? I think the triple threat match was all right at the end, considering like how much wrestling we'd had to sit for. Obviously, we were there. We loved sitting through it, but the fact that they managed to sustain the crowd for that long. And it was obviously quite historic that it was the first headliner for women for WrestleMania. That was pretty special. There was a couple of good matches. I appreciated the Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre match as well, because obviously he come back from battling leukemia, so that was cool. I just enjoyed that. I just enjoyed the whole experience, man. You know, it was great. Like, I was with some of my best friends there. We were all massive wrestlers. A few of them had been to like the WrestleMania of the year before as well. But for me and one of my other buddies, it was the first time going to Mania. So yeah, it was awesome, man. Yeah,
AJ and Randy Orton was a good match. That was a match that came to mind. Tag match was good. The Fatal 4-Way match, that was a good match. The Usos came out on top, if I recall correctly. There was some other matches I didn't care for much. Wasn't crazy about the Seth and Brock match. Just wasn't into that because it was just a short match. But I mean, sitting through something,
it was quite impactful, I suppose. I was sort of
mind, that's what
it
was. I was kind of expecting like something more than what it was, and it wasn't, but understood. I mean, but obviously, listen, I mean, just to sit through something like that, I mean, to be there as long as it was, I mean, that's one of those things like you go to your grave and say, wow, I was at WrestleMania 35 and it was like 7 or 8 hours and I was there in New York. So that was like when my brothers went to, I think it was WrestleMania 29, I want to say. I think it was 29. I think 29 was at the Meadowlands. I want to say, I think it was 29 my brothers went to. It was with 29 or 30. 29. It was 29. So that's one of those moments. So WrestleMania 20 also came to, which we had WrestleMania 20 here in New York, because what they used to do is every 10 years, you'd have WrestleMania in New York. It was WrestleMania 1, WrestleMania 10, WrestleMania 20. 29 they had as a technicality, then they had 35. So those are great things. And obviously, again, these are reasons why we're, again, very excited, because we think John McKinney is going to have his WrestleMania moment upcoming here at Saturday's event. But John, I want to ask you this question, and I ask it to everybody else here. Give me your goals for 2022.
Wow. Do you know what? I think it's there's been a lot of change in my, a lot of positive change in my life, actually, over the last few months, in terms of like my day job, my real job. I've just started a new job, which was quite a big promotion. So that's been really good. So my focus is to obviously do really well in that. Wrestling wise, short-term goal is to beat Lachlan and finally put an end to this. And then I've got my eye on Reynaldo. Well, currently Reynaldo's belt, but I've got my eye on the prize. I think it'll look good on me. I think as we've already discussed, what a poster boy for LWF. Like,
well, Mikey Fitz did kind of say that you and Lachlan would almost be the match that if you were going to bring a lady, you would definitely want to have their eyes closed. Because he said basically you and Lachlan would take their girl away from them.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know about Lachlan. I mean, have you seen that mullet? Like,
I'm not one to talk. Clearly, I'm not one.
Yeah,
to talk,
but I mean, all I've got to say to Lachlan is like Rick Rude called and he wants his haircut back. You know, it's
he did have the 1989 look. He did have that remember the Oshkosh jeans or those dirty looking military jean look. He does kind of have that 1989. And you know what I'm thinking of? You're going to chuckle when I say this. If you remember Def Leppard Hysteria and the Hysteria videos, like Joe Elliott running around with those dungaree jeans, those gray jeans with the white cutoff t-shirt. I mean, not to say that certainly Mr. Sharpe is nowhere in the category of Mr. Joe Elliott, but for whatever reason, that's exactly what that reminds me of. Boy, I'm going to get in so much trouble for what I've said here tonight, but those are definitely some of the things that I'm going to get in trouble for.
That's what we're here for, right?
I almost have to ask you very quickly, because we've touched upon Reynaldo. I've had him on a couple of times, and he won the championship. It was a great comeback story, no question about it. He hadn't been a world champion in 10 years, and if you win on Saturday, which we know you're going to win. We know you're going to win here Saturday. And obviously, depending on how the way things shape up in the triple threat match, you would be a top contender. Legitimately speaking, you're a top contender if Reynaldo can come away and hang on to his championship over the next few months. You would be one of those guys that could potentially take the LWF championship. I'm curious, John, because I have a feeling a lot of people would be curious to know your thoughts on this. What do you make of this whole Reynaldo story? Is it a novelty act? Is it a comeback story? Is it contrived by LWF management? I mean, Nick Cutter basically said his eye was taken off the ball when it came to his match against Reynaldo. But Reynaldo proved that he could still hang. He beat Jack Roberts. Jack Roberts beat our Stephen Cross, and Jack Roberts had been on a pretty good run in his own right. But what do you make of Reynaldo as the LWF champion right now?
I think that Reynaldo, you can't, I mean, even someone as sort of, I suppose, self-absorbed as myself couldn't help but feel happy for Reynaldo when he won the title. You know, I think he deserved it. He's served the LWF well. But I think that's it. I mean, Lachlan Sharpe was making some comments about how he thinks I should be retiring because I'm I'm focusing on my music quite a lot now. Reynaldo, is it his last hurrah? I mean, it could be that he's just going to have it. He's going to have his moment. Then he's going to go back to his wife and kids, and he's going to hand the belt over to someone who's actually going to do something with it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that could very well be the case. And listen, John Mckinnie would be, quote unquote, the new generation here in the LWF, the guy that can promote the company. And we've talked quite a bit of reasons why John Mckinnie could be the guy to get the LWF much more exposure because of his success outside of professional wrestling, because of what he's accomplished. So certainly Reynaldo is going to have his work cut out for him, whoever comes away the triple threat match coming up here this Saturday. But I'm certain that John Mckinnie will be the guy, a top contender for Reynaldo's belt should he walk away from it. And John, I have to read a comment here because we have one on Facebook, and I wasn't going to read it off, but I'm sure you'll get a chuckle out of it because apparently Mr. Bob Costin claims that Lachlan Sharpe is going to win, and he says that you won't make it to your gig coming here this Saturday. So a thought or two to Bob Costin, or just don't even consider it?
Lachlan, I mean, Bob Costin, what can I say? He is like if the LWF ordered a cheerleader from wish.com, that would be Bob Costin, and that stupid peroxide blonde hair, that faded LWF vest that he wears, that wrestling which looks more like rubbish dancing. That coward can keep his comments to himself.
Ooh, ladies and gentlemen, wow, certainly big words there for Bob Costin. Again, we don't know what Bob Costin's condition is right now because we had him a few weeks ago, but he didn't come on video. So we don't know. Is Bob Costin, I mean, what does he look like? Is he blinded? Is he still with a broken nose? I mean, who knows? Nate Reese is a tough guy. So Nate Reese definitely a number on Mr. Costin. So who knows really? So we certainly will see what happens when it comes to Bob Costin. So fair comments there from John Mckinnie to come back on him. John, I want to ask you this question, and I'm going to ask it in a kind of a segue to closing thoughts and a few other things here. But is there anything that you want to say in particular, any final thoughts to Lachlan Sharpe before Saturday's match?
Yeah, I mean, Lachlan, underestimate me at your peril because as the talented musician that I am, I will be bringing the hits, and I'll be bringing the hits to you. All the people in silly little Buckshaw Village, they'll be experiencing greatness, you know. They'll have a superstar for one match, and then I'll be off to do something else. But, you know, savor the moment, people, because I'm going to be there, and Lachlan Sharpe's going to be going down under a very, very unhappy man.
Ooh, ladies and gentlemen, certainly Lachlan Sharpe is going to have his work cut out for him. These are reasons why this Saturday, if you can, there's a few tickets available still. Make sure you get to the Buckshaw Village Community Center because John Mckinnie and Lachlan Sharpe is arguably going to be the match that steals the show. 2 out of 3 falls. The final curtain match. When you think about all-time great matches, you think about all-time great 2 out of 3 falls matches. It's a very strong certainty that John Mckinnie and Lachlan Sharpe are going to have one of those matches that you are going to remember. It is going to be one of the greatest matches in LWF history. And this is a match that Mikey Fitzgerald said he's really, really excited to see. So you got to give the devil his due. He said this is the match that he's most excited about. So this is a match, again, that I'm excited about. Everybody who's listening and watching this should be excited about because John Mckinnie is going to put on a show. We are certainly looking forward to that. You can follow the LWF, again, on Instagram, the LWF Wrestling, Twitter, LWF. Also subscribe to the YouTube page. Also Facebook, please like as well, because I can assure you this is going to be a match and an event that you are not going to want to miss. And John, I always like to ask this question here before closing thoughts here. I know you've had a lot of moments in your career. You can answer it many different ways, but is there 1 or 2 moments that stand out most in your career so far?
I mean, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I think myself, like a few others, probably had a few of their moments kind of stolen away through circumstances that I won't really go into. So there's a few bits, unfortunately, I've had to kind of, you know, almost disregard as part of my career.
Hopefully it's not this interview.
Well, no, this is certainly one of the highlights, you know. But I think there's a few that I'll mention. I think that given that given that I started wrestling at a fairly, I wouldn't say old, but a fairly moderate age. You know, I
You
sort
can't be
of,
like DDP. DDP was 45 when he started,
yeah. I
so
mean,
you're not that
we're
bad,
not
John.
talking that
John,
old, but
give
I
yourself
think,
credit, John.
yeah. I mean, I started with, I suppose, quite sort of like moderate to realistic ambitions, and one of those ambitions was to, you know, get onto Future Shock Wrestling and wrestle for Future Shock. And I was lucky enough and privileged enough last year to wrestle for them, and I think on 3 shows so far, and then one behind closed doors. Hopefully that's not the end of it. But then again, and also actually getting onto the LWF, because, like I say, for whatever beef I've got with Steve and Mike and the whole kind of like power cut situation at the moment. One thing I can't fault is they run a great wrestling show, wrestling company. They give talent opportunities. They are getting bigger names in as they go, but they still remember the guys that have been with them from the beginning. And you know, you've got to give them some respect for that. So yeah, representing the LWF's a massive highlight. And then obviously the biggest highlight will be this Saturday when I beat Lachlan Sharpe.
Well, that's the best answer you could have had, because obviously your biggest moment is the one that isn't coming, and it's coming this Saturday. So obviously that's your biggest moment. So obviously, again, I'm very, very excited about that. And listen, at the end of the day, I'm glad that we're not one of those moments that you have to forget and can't even mention. So I'm happy at least that we can come on and have you and talk about all the great things that you're doing. And before I get closing thoughts from you, I got to break it, because if I'll get in a lot of trouble if I don't break it here. But we have breaking news here next Tuesday. We're going to have him on here, the Scenario Nathan Gunn. And I know he's kind of a big fan of yours. He maybe won't admit it, but he is sort of a big fan of yours.
Of course he is. Of course he is.
Yeah, well, he shared some of our videos on Instagram. In fact, he actually DM'd me about coming back on because he has an announcement that he's going to make. But I'm going to leave it for next Tuesday when he comes on. But certainly we understand that Mr. Gunn is actually going to be a part of the LWF's upcoming event here this Saturday. But I almost have to ask you, I'm going to probably get a funny answer or some kind of LOL out of this. But, I mean, what do you want to say to Nathan Gunn? Because I know Nathan Gunn is definitely going to watch this. He's definitely going to listen to it, and he may even share it.
Nathan Gunn, I mean, Nathan Gunn obviously wants a match with me. He would love to have a match with me. He knows that J-Mac and Nathan Gunn would be the main event, and I mean, yeah, that's what he wants, and maybe that's what he'll get. Who knows what's going to happen after I beat Lachlan Sharpe on Saturday?
But if you beat Lachlan Sharpe, you're going to be worried about Reynaldo. You're going to be worried about that. I mean, we love the Stereo Nathan Gunn, but maybe he might have to wait. I mean, that's just one thing I would have to say with an asterisk there. Mr. Gunn might have to wait.
I mean, yeah, I mean, he can get in line because everybody knows that when they step in the ring with me, you know, the coverage is there, and it's kind of like elevates their own career and their own personality. So Nathan Gunn will get there one day. He just needs to try harder.
He might have to. I mean, certainly his luck might borderline the Miz's right now when it comes to in-ring performances. And I won't ask you in terms of Mr. Gunn's singing skills, because we do know that in a prior life that Mr. Gunn was actually a singer. We actually know that.
Oh yeah, I've heard the rumors, but I've not seen the evidence. So
you know, I probably have to ask him now this, because I think I've referenced it now like 4 or 5 different times in the last 2 months, and I have to give a credit to Wildfire Nate Reese, because of all people, Wildfire Nate Reese was like, he actually said it on the air. He goes, yeah, Nathan Gunn, this Scenario, he's a singer. And I'm like, well, where can we see footage? Where can we see the tape? So, I mean, we might have to ask Mr. Gunn this. I hope he's not.
Well, it's about as difficult to find as Bob Costin on Saturday night.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, big words. And that's a fair point, because Mr. Costin has the night off. And again, I still can't figure out, if I'm a wrestler, why would I give up my spot? Give up a spot, a huge part of being a part of one of the biggest events in all wrestling this year. You give it up to a guy that beat you up to a bloody pulp. But listen, that's Bob Costin's problem. Certainly, Wildfire Nate Reese is going to try to make the most of it. Certainly, we'll see what happens. We'll talk with Nate, I'm sure, Friday night for sure for that. But it has been a tremendous honor. I know you're a busy man because you got rehearsals, you got work, you got training, you got Who knows what else you got going on? Maybe acting. You probably do some acting for all we know. I mean, there probably isn't anything that you can't do. I mean, in a sense, you could probably be like Mr. Perfect was in those 1988 early WWF videos where they showed him with a basketball. They showed him with a hockey stick scoring. They showed him hitting a home run in baseball. You probably could do that because clearly you can sing. Clearly you can wrestle. Clearly you can talk. You probably could act. I don't know what else you could do, but obviously I do want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything you want to say to anybody else out there, to your fans, to the LWF. Also plug your social media, anything that you want to cover or we've missed, whatever else on your mind. And I can't thank you enough, my friend, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean, as I said at the start, appreciate being on the show. Obviously, the pleasure is all yours. It's a big coup for you. I can understand that, but
it actually is. I'm speaking with all different types of people, and I have a politician on tonight in American time, but I'd much rather speak with you than a politician because I'm going to have to worry about, am I pissing off the Democrats or am I pissing off the Republicans here in America? At least with you, the pleasure's all mine.
Exactly that. And yeah, I mean, I think I'll just say that, Saturday is my match against Lachlan Sharpe is obviously going to be the match of the night. There's no doubt about that. But to be fair to all the other guys and girls on the card, it's going to be a whole show of fantastic wrestling. So, if you haven't got a ticket yet, get yourselves down there, get a ticket. As I say, I've got other things to do after the show, so I'm out of there. After I beat Lachlan Sharpe, I've got other things to do. So it'll be interesting to see whether Bob Coston shows up with his yellow belly or not, but I think we know that he won't. And I suppose the other thing I just wanted to mention was some comments that Aiton Steen made about my music career and how he didn't want to come down to the ring to an acoustic version of Sex on Fire. So I'd just like to retort that by saying that him and his little buddies in Shining Wizard, if they just want to carry on having sleepovers and playing Guitar Hero, that would be fantastic. And leave the real musicians to do their job.
I have to say, John, and I'm going to bring it up because we're going to go here in a minute, but I am going to bring it up because I did suggest to Mikey Fitzgerald, and I certainly did bring it up to Aiton, that you are a professional musician. And we know in the past, Dale Oliver did music for TNA. Jimmy Hart did it for WWE and WCW. Jim Johnston. I mean, I know that you might do more acoustic bass, but you are a real musician, as they might want to say, versus, let's say, maybe Shining Wizard, if you want to put that out there. And I mean, why not have in-house music from the LWF? I mean, John, I know you're a busy man. I know you get paid a lot of money to do what you do. But I mean, it would make sense, right? Instead of having to worry about, well, Wrecking Crew comes out to Iron Man. Well, will Black Sabbath or Warner Brothers come out and say you can't use that? I mean, why not just have J-Mac create all the music here for the LWF? I mean, that would make sense. I mean, has Steve Bibby asked you even?
It simply comes down to the fact that Steve Bibby knows he couldn't afford me. He can barely afford me for wrestling. He's not going to.
I don't even know how he can afford Franco Varga, frankly. I don't know how he can afford him.
Yeah, but there's no way. I mean, I love wrestling for Steve Bibby, but my music career is another level altogether. There's no way that they can afford to get me doing the music there. So I will keep the two things separate for now.
And before we go, Bob Costin has an Oasis reference, so I had to throw an Oasis reference. He says, I'm sure we'll see. And he says, now, where's Wonderwall? Obviously referring to Oasis. So, I mean, clearly, I guess Mr. Costin's an Oasis fan. I mean, I have mixed feelings about Oasis. So, I mean, I feel like everybody has mixed feelings about Oasis. So, I mean, should I even ask you if you're an Oasis fan? I don't even know if I should ask.
I play Oasis because obviously I'm from Manchester.
Obviously.
I just roll with it,
Yeah, I that's why I knew you'd give me that answer, because I feel like every musician, because we're friends with the Frantics and the Superlatives. If I bring up Oasis, it's almost like it's a groan. It's almost like, how can I put it? Like in America, if I mentioned like Metallica or somebody like that, it's like, yeah, oh yeah, we know they're from San Francisco, but it's like, you know what I'm saying? So I kind of figured you'd give me that answer, but clearly Mr. Costin wanted to throw that out there. But that's for Mr. Costin. I'm sure he's going to be at home this Saturday having hot chocolate and maybe laying on the couch and hiding
under his blanket as well. Just in case
I mean, listen, I mean, certainly it might be warmer there than it'll be for him, certainly when it comes to Nate Reese putting a number on him. But obviously, John, I want everybody to follow you one more time on Instagram, JMCK Attack. Also, like your Facebook page. It has been a tremendous honor. I cannot thank you enough. Congratulations on all of your success in the ring and outside the ring. Go get him Saturday. We know you're going to get the job done. We're going to bring you back on. You're going to talk about Reynaldo and all the great things you did here in this match. And thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to speaking with you soon, and go get him out there Saturday.
Thanks, Tom. I'll speak to you soon.
As we're here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show with pro wrestling star here and musician J-Mac John Mckinnie, who is just now hours away from his huge match upcoming here this Saturday. 2 out of 3 falls, the final curtain match between him and Lachlan Sharpe. We know he's going to get the job done here, and he told us reasons why. And I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce, and we will be back here tomorrow night, 9 p.m. British Standard Time. We'll be back with another pro wrestling star. That is Jack Johnson, who will be just in his own right hours away from the biggest date ever. He'll also be at GT Ministries. That'll be the following week. So looking forward to speaking with Jack. We'll also have the Wildfire Nate Reese and the Asset Stephen Cross, 10 p.m. British Standard Time this Friday, to speak more about the LWF's card and maybe some thoughts on Bob Costin and certainly J-Mac John Mckinnie. So I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. If you're on sportnarium.com/player, you'll get some new shows here. Hang on tight, about 20 minutes or so when we reset the dial. And if you're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, also a Northeast Streaming Sports channel, I want to thank, obviously, Lyndon McGrath and John McGrath for putting us on their Roku channel, for getting us here worldwide. So if you're on their show and their channel, their programming will reset here in about 5 or so minutes. So thank you to them as well. So I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce, and good night, everyone.